Hi everybody, my name is Steven Loera, and for the Grading and Assessment Research Project I chose to take a look at standardized testing and reporting, also known as STAR, in the state of California. So first things first, what is it? If you grew up in the public school system, we're probably familiar with STAR. It's been around since 1998, and basically it was a program designed to measure how well students are performing in specific areas such as math, English, science, and history. The purpose, according to STAR, the main purpose at least, is to identify student weakness and strength. It's also meant to serve as a tool to help parents and teachers work together to improve student learning. It's meant to allow the public and policymakers to hold public schools accountable. And it's meant to provide policymakers with information to help make program decisions and allocate resources. When looking at STAR's website, in bold print they have their goal, and basically it says their goal in California is to have all students performing at the proficient or advanced levels. I'll go over the different performance levels on the next slide, but proficient and advanced, that's their overall goal. So the state determines student success rates by these 5 performance levels. The first one, like I mentioned, was advanced. And basically, this level represents superior performance. Students are demonstrating comprehensive and complex understandings of the knowledge and skills measured in the specific grading content area. The second one, which is still good for the state, is a solid performance. That shows that students are competent and adequately understand the knowledge and skills in that specific content area. Then you go to basic, which is a more limited performance, and far below and below, basically meaning serious lack of performance. So the testing is done at different grade levels from grades 2 through 11. So 2, 3, 5, 6, and 8 through 11, it's performance based only on multiple choice. Grades 4 and 7 will offer 75 multiple choice and an 8-point writing prompt. Now if you look off to the right hand side, I pulled the percent of students scoring at proficient or advanced for Baldwin Park High School, which is the school I'm doing my fieldwork hours. If you notice, the school is below average in all subjects except for history and social sciences, where they're 7 points above the district. But in all other areas, they're at least average about 7 all the way up to almost 17-point disparity between the district and the school. So like I mentioned, from 1998 all the way up to 2012, I believe it was, grades 2 through 11 would take a STAR test. Parents did have an option to exempt their children by submitting a written request to the school, but if not, the state STAR consisted of 4 major tests. The first one is California Standards Test, which is for public schools, any student in public schools, grades 2 through 12. With CSTs, depending what grade you were in, you would focus on either math, history, language arts. I brought up a slide here so you can see what's required in each grade. So depending what grade level you're at, the teachers would have to focus on those aspects. So for example, grade 8, you have math, English, science, and history from 8 to 11 actually, whereas in the second grade, students were focusing on math and language arts. So we can see here, and I'll show you in the subsequent test, that STAR provides math, language arts, science, and social studies teachers are the ones most affected by it. Especially all 4 in the latter grades, because students are being tested more frequently on all 4 components. The second type of testing provided by STAR is California Modified Assessment, CMA, and essentially this is the test adapted for students with disabilities that meet state requirements. The third test offered by the state is California Alternative Performance Assessment, CAPA, and this is for students with more severe, significant cognitive disabilities who cannot take CSTs even with accommodations or modifications. And finally, we have the standard-based test in Spanish, which is for Spanish-speaking English learners in California public schools. So in order for students to qualify for the CST testing, students must be receiving instruction in Spanish, and they should have been enrolled in a U.S. school less than 12 consecutive months in a row. Okay, so especially since the inception of Common Core, there's been a lot of criticisms of STAR. Number one being it really hasn't improved student achievement scores. There's a report saying that after No Child Left Behind was passed in 2002, the USA actually slipped into 18th place in the world in terms of math and into 31st place by 2009. There was also a similar drop in science and a stagnation in terms of reading. Didn't move up or down. Another criticism of STAR was that it was an unreliable measure of student performance. There was a Brookings institution found that 50 to 80% of year-over-year test scores improvements were temporary and caused by fluctuations that had nothing to do with long-term changes in learning. So it might just have been the student's mood that day, if he got enough rest the night before, or what things going on at home, or the environment around the student that might have caused such a difference in their scores year to year. Another criticism that I myself thought about when I was going over the test, CTS, for students, Spanish-speaking students, was that it's unfair to them, because as we know from our 470 class, in terms of students to develop or fully develop their CALP abilities in terms of English, takes up 5 to 7 years, and the threshold is only 12 months for students to be transitioned into the regular CTS testing program. So we can see that students who only have a BICS foundation in terms of their English output probably won't do very well on these standardized tests. And then another big criticism was that STAR testing only measures a small portion of what makes education meaningful. Scantron testing can't really measure creativity, critical thinking, resilience, motivation, curiosity, endurance, reliability, a large host of other aspects in terms of education. So with some of these criticisms in mind, there are huge changes coming to STAR. First off, in 2013, Assembly Bill 484 essentially suspended state standardized testing. They did this to allow schools time to prepare for the new Smarter Balance Assessment, which aligns to Common Core. So the new program being kind of worked out by the legislators up in Sacramento is California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, the acronym CAASPP. This new program is still in the works. Won't really be implemented for another 2.5 years. We're starting to see starting to come down the line, but we're still a couple years off. So what's next? Like I mentioned, it'll be CAASPP, and basically the way the policymakers are working it out is Common Core is going to be the framework for this new standardized testing. So one of the biggest aspects is going to be computer-based, and that's just meant to provide more feedback. It's more useful in terms of understanding a student's intelligence level. So it'll provide a multi-step question that will require students to write more and really show the thinking behind their answers. So the first rollout will be in spring of 2015, and that'll be with English and Math California standardized test, modeled after Common Core. Now when the program initially rolls out, at least for the first 3 years, schools will have the option to provide a paper and pencil exam, just while districts get the resources and the funding needed to provide computers for students to take these tests on. Another compromise will be that in the legislation you couldn't compare the old test scores to the new test scores. They've written it into it so that organizations really can't do that. And they say it'd be flawed anyway, because by the time it all rolls out, it'll be 3 to 5 years down the line. So you'll basically be comparing apples to oranges anyway. And so essentially, this new standardized testing is about 2.5 years off before it's really implemented and rolled out into our school systems. Okay, so to recap, STAR is basically California's Standardized Testing and Reporting Program. Testing we take every spring from grades 12 through 11. It's been around since 1998, so we should all be very familiar with this form of testing. There was 4 formats: students with disabilities, severe disabilities, and Spanish-speaking students. And the purpose of STAR testing is to provide information on student progress to teachers, parents, and policymakers. And as I mentioned, it's being replaced by the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress to be more in line with Common Core in terms of getting students to think more critically and justify their answers. But remember, CAASPP is still 2.5 to 5 years down the line. Sacramento's still trying to get all the kinks worked out. But overall, it's meant to be a better indicator of student progress. So that's my presentation on STAR. Thank you, everybody.